Okay, this is just a quick video on installing your piston rings and your seals on your pistons. So, when you get a new kit, they come as, all separated out. So you've got your top ring, your second ring, your wiper seal, and then your top and bottom ring for that. Something to note when you're putting these on, I've got this one set up here, and I'll zoom in on that in a second. But I wanna make sure that you understand that, I don't know if you can see this or not, if it'll zoom in or not, but there's a way that these go together, and you'll see that if you look at, let's see if I can put it here where you can see it. Maybe not, I'm not sure. See if I can zoom in on this. If you see, these curve up this way. Okay, so it goes over like this, over, down, over, and up, and stops. And the same one on the other side comes over, down, over, up, and stops. So that's where they meet. Okay, you can see that as they come together, I'm going to turn this a different way so you can see it. As they come together, that's where they meet at. Now, when these come together, there's a top seal for this and a bottom seal for this. You back this out a little bit, hopefully you can see this. Okay, so get your oil ring, top seal, and then there's a second one. They're exactly the same. There it goes on the bottom. There is, set that down, there is on the inside of this seal ring a little spot that pops up. You can catch it with your thumbnail right there. When this seal goes on, it does not sit all the way on the inside like this. It actually rides, and maybe you can see this, it actually rides. Do you see that right there? How there's, this seal ring is actually sticking on the inside of this seal. Oil ring is on the inside. This rides up to that notch. You can actually feel where it catches right there. Okay, it does not sit on top of it like that. That will pancake inside of your opening, and it will seize that right up. It will not let it, if you can see this one floating around, it will not let it float around like that. So make sure that that sits just like that. And the only way to do that is to put this in first. Okay, this goes in first. This is pretty simple. When you go to put it in, you can just stretch this apart, put it in, and then once that's in, you can take these and spread those around. One goes on the bottom of it, one goes on the top of it. As long as that goes in first, these should come in together and ride right on the inside of that ring. Now, these you don't have to use a piston ring plier with. This is a piston ring plier. There's a way to do this where you can put it in, and you separate this out with these, and it spreads them apart like this. Okay, these aren't that detrimental. The only thing you have to be careful of is not to scrape the side of your piston. Now, I'm using the original pistons. There's nothing wrong with these. There's a little bit of burn on the top of them, which is fine. I scraped it all off, used some carb cleaner on it, got it off. Actually, if you look at the one next to it right there, that's what it looked like before I started. Okay, so you do have to clean them up, get the carbon deposits and stuff off them, make sure that your ring grooves are all cleaned out, the whole thing. Now, there's once this is in, like I said, it goes in. Now, there's a trick to lining these up, okay, the ring openings. The reason it's cut is because you have to spread it apart to get it over the piston to put it into the groove, right? So when you go to do that, you get it in place, you got your seal in first, then your wiper rings go on top and bottom, but they go at an angle. Now this is, let me pick this up See if you can see this. Okay. This notch on this particular piston right here indicates that it goes to the front of the engine. Your wiper rings, you want to put those in the back. So the opening on your seal, okay, opening on your seal, you can get that in there again. The opening on your seal goes, okay, the opening on the seal right there goes on the back side of the piston, okay. So, back this up a little bit. Front side of the piston, this will point towards the front of the engine. This is the back side of the piston. That's where the opening goes, the cut for the seal. Now the ring for the top and the bottom are going to go at 45-degree angles opposite of that. Okay, one's going to go in this direction, one's going to go in this direction. You can take and mark, I've got it on there, I'm not sure how clear you can see it. There's an X here, there's an X here. When you put your bottom seal on, line one up at 45 degrees to the right. You put your top seal on, line one at 45 degrees to the left. Now, there's no specific way for your first and second ring, but the entire intent of having these rings, the ring cuts in separate spots, is so that you don't have oil blow by. Now, some people say, oh, I do them 180, you know, that always seems to work well. There's actually a standard for this that says they go to the front side of the piston at 45 and 45 as well. Some guys are like, oh, I do 180, 180, 180, 180. It's the same thing, but everything goes at 45 degrees off the 90. So that's how they're set up. Now, before you go to put in a piston ring, you do one cylinder at a time, okay? There's a reason for that. You are going to size these rings to every piston that you do. Okay, so every cylinder is going to get its own. I'm going to set this down a second, right here. Okay, actually, let me lock these in real quick. Sorry. My bad. Okay, you're going to do these for every piston. And you have to check the ring gap, which is the gap between each open face of the ring when it's in the cylinder. Now, there's a way to do this. I'm going to step past you here. So you can put this in, okay. You're just going to kind of roll this right around until it goes in. Okay, it's not rocket science there. You're going to get it in. Then you want to get it level. That's when, if you're working on number one piston, or 184, 5432, or whatever, take your piston and put it in at the top. The ring's already in there, and just get it straight, just like that. Okay. Now it's evenly spaced all the way around. Piston's got it nice and flat, and you can see where the ring cut comes together. Now we're not looking at getting it at the 45 degrees right now. All we're doing is sizing the piston, or I'm sorry, the ring to the cylinder once it goes in the piston. Because this gap right here, see if I can zoom in on that for you. Okay, move in here. You can see this gap right here is where they come together. And you can see there's so much of a gap there. But how much is it? Well, that has to be calculated. So you take the size of your bore, okay, and you multiply it by 0.004. So if you've got a 4-inch bore multiplied by 0.004, you come up with what, 0.016? My math isn't the greatest, but I'm going to go with that, 0.016. This is a 1, these are actually set on doubles here. So let me get to the two that I want. Okay, this is a 1.6 and a 1.8 and a 1.7 and a 1.9. So it's a step gauge. Okay, so this is a 4-inch bore. Using that math, we come up with the 0.16, which is where we're at. Okay, and we're going to check that real quick. And that is a perfect, it feels like it's perfect anyway, 0.16. Now we're going to go to 1.7 and make sure that it doesn't work. And it's just kind of getting stuck right there. So I mean, I can force it in, gets in about halfway, and that's about it. So that's not quite 1.7. And that actually feels really good right there. So it's 1.6. So you're going to do that for your upper or your first and second ring to make sure that they are gapped correctly. If they're not, if they're too tight, you can use a gap cutter or a ring cutter, which is just a little disc wheel, or you can file it by hand, but you have to be very careful with it. They actually make a tool for that. I'll be honest, I've gone through and done a bunch of these already. I've never really had one out. As long as you're ordering, quality parts from, quality suppliers, you don't generally run into a problem. I've honestly never had to re-gap one. They've all come in perfect. So, but I say you're going to do each one because, when this went to the machine shop, it's cut 40 over. This is an Olds 455. Obviously, you assume your machine shop's going to do great work. You go through. I always check holes when they're done. I do everything there's going to do, that you need to check. But I still do each cylinder one at a time. So this one's going to get this piston's going to get built. It's going to be for this cylinder hole. Next piston's going to get built. It's going to be for this cylinder hole. So on and so on. When you go to install them, you're going to put your new bearings on and stuff. You take your bottom cap off. You're going to put, I do anyway, you're going to put rubber, just you can use like fuel line or heater hose if it's the right size, or even vacuum line if it's the right size. You're going to put that over the bolts as it goes in. So you're going to take your cap off. Okay. See if I can hurry up and do this real quick, just so you understand what I'm saying. I'm sure you do. If you're this far into building engines, you understand what I'm saying. But you're going to put a rubber hose over both of these right here. You're going to put, these are old bearings, but you're going to put new bearings in. And when you go to install that, you're going to use your piston installer, which you can use one just like this. It just you tighten it up, wraps around the edge of the piston. This gets dropped in this way, slides down in. You tap it in. You guide the backside in, so it goes around the crankshaft. You don't want these to hit the crank. Okay, you don't want to put a little nick in the bearing surface on the crankshaft. That's a huge no-no. Some guys are like, oh, I can just work it in myself. It's no big deal. I've never had an issue. It only takes one time, and then you've got a dink in your crankshaft, and it's not a spot that you want to be in. Trust me. So I'm going to go through, and I'm going to set up the rest of these. I'm going to size them up for each cylinder, like I said, and I'm going to go through and do that. The one thing I do want to remind you of is that don't wait to run the engine to lubricate these rings. There's a lot of different lubricants that you can use, but I can tell you that Moly Rings, the Moly company, recommends that you use the same oil for this that you're using, and it's a good quality oil. Obviously, you're going to use a good quality oil to break your engine in. You're going to use the same oil to lubricate these rings, and it's as simple as this. I just have a little, come back over here. Okay, I'm going to zoom this back out. Okay, I've just got a little container of it, and literally all you need to do, okay, is take that and lubricate your ring just like this. Okay, this isn't rocket science. All we're doing is getting some lubrication on there. And the reason is that once you install this in the piston, you want it to be able to free float around there. Okay, it's going to do what it does. It's going to, if it's going to move a little bit, it's going to move a little bit. but it has to be able to, because this is when it heats up and cools down, it's going to contract and it's going to expand. So it's got to be able to move inside of there. If you don't lubricate it and it binds up in there, it's not going to seal, or it's gonna chew up the inside of your piston wall there, which you don't want as well. Now, there's also, as you look at your rings, every ring kit, this one is just a sealed power, which I use a lot of because they're very good rings. They come as a kit, obviously. So there's a top ring, or a first ring, and a second ring, right? They come together in a kit. This one is fully coated. You can see it's got black all the way around it. And hopefully the camera's able to zoom in, or if you can tell, this one's shiny. If I put them side by side, you can tell which ones are the first and which ones are the second. You actually look at that and see if you can tell. Yeah, you can tell. So if these got all mixed up, you would still be able to separate out which ones are which. The next step of that is understanding the top side and the bottom side of a ring, because they're different. There's a chamfer on a ring, and it's to seal against the piston as it builds compression and as it wipes back down into the cylinder, so it wipes the oil back down into the crankcase. Okay, so you'll see typically on an upper ring, you'll see an angle this way, forcing compression up, and then on the bottom ring, you'll generally see an angle this way, forcing oil back down. That's typically the route that it's going to go. They are always marked as well. So, now they're not always marked, I shouldn't say that. Some rings are marked, some rings aren't. Because some rings don't have a chamfer on them at all. But for the rings that are marked, they could be marked with a dot, they could say top, there could be an insignia marking on them. If there's a dot or a mark on them, that goes up. And I just wiped this one, so hopefully you can see this. I'll try to get it in the right angle. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. There's a dot right there. Okay, whether you can or can't see it, there's a dot right there. That means this side goes up. And if I look at, see if I can just tell by looking. Yep, so the chamfer is on the bottom side. So for this one, the dot's on the top, chamfer's on the bottom side. This is a secondary ring. It's going to force the oil back down into the crankcase on the bottom stroke. Okay, this one is actually just a solid. There's no chamfer on this one at all. There's no marking on this one at all. This could go this way, could go this way. It doesn't matter. This one, that's the first ring. Second ring makes a difference because it's going to take the oil back down into the crankcase, not leave it up on top of the cylinder. Obviously, that's when your engine smokes and you've got blow by and all those bad things happen. So that's essentially putting rings together. I've already got the bottom seal in on this one. It's all ready to go together. Remember, top, middle, bottom, there's a groove on those. It sits inside the groove. You can't put it together outside the piston. So this goes first, then one of these on the bottom, then one of these on the top, and the bottom, the seal side is set. And like I said, it should float around. Make sure your marks are lined up, 45, 45, 45, 45. You can mark your pistons if you want to. I do. I just use a marker. It'll burn off. It's no big deal.